There she is, guys, the 7.3 liter Godzilla, custom fitted to this car. And as you might imagine, trying to cram a Godzilla in here takes a little bit of work. The extra cost related to this engine has to do with all of the modifications that were done. The most important modification was the Willis Engineering Cali's Stage 1 cam. That took the horsepower from the stock 430, I think it is, to 600 horsepower and 600 foot-pounds of torque at the crank. But as you might imagine, as small as this car is and how simple the transmission is, there isn't a whole lot of power loss to the wheels. So along with that, the entire oil system had to be converted in order to account for the depth of the standard oil pan. So it has the Indy Power Products modified oil pan and oil system. So that's a completely different oil pump conversion, all new oil pump, drive hardware, a completely new oil pan system, which has a billeted pan rail with 12 orb inlets and outlets. So it still holds about 9 quarts of oil. It just does it a little bit differently, and it's designed specifically to shallow the pan so that this engine can actually fit in here. The other thing that is super obvious in this car is the 8-stack intake manifold from Velocity, and it has the stack filters. I actually had to pick out the color of the filter. You see that black ring around the filter. You could literally pick the color of the filter. You could also pick the color of the valve covers. You could change the color of those. I went with black on everything simply because the car is gray and black. I didn't want to get flashy and do yellow or blue or anything like that, so I kept it simple. Another interesting thing about this, it has a VVT lockout assembly on it, so they really are not caring about anything related to fuel efficiency. It's just brute force and ignorance crammed into an engine bay, which of course makes great noise. So along with all of that, you had to have custom headers, custom breathers. You had to have low pressure fuel swirl pot put in, all kinds of little bits and bobs to make this work. So there are a lot of modifications to this engine. This isn't just simply a 7.3 crammed in. This is a highly modified with highly engineered upgrades to get you that 600 horsepower and certainly to give you the look that it has right here. So super happy with this engine. It runs great. It sounds awesome. The cam is a street cam. It's pretty mild. You do get a little bit of loping out of the engine, but it's not overly aggressive like you might see in some of the LS swaps that go on these days. Didn't really want a heavy lope. There comes a point at which it just starts sounding like it isn't going to run. But it's a much more streetable cam in here, and certainly the 600 horsepower, it doesn't hurt anything. So what does the 600 horsepower really mean? One way you can take a look at that is power to weight ratio. And I decided to start playing around with calculations on a horsepower per standard ton basis. So the way you do that is you divide the weight of the car, the 2,420 pounds, by 2,000 pounds. And in this car, that's a ratio of 1.21. You divide the 600 horsepower by 1.21, and you get your horsepower per ton. So for this car, the horsepower per ton is 495.9 horsepower per standard ton. So I started thinking, well, okay, what does that mean? How does it compare to other cars? And I looked up a couple, and I found some lists, and I started doing my own calculations. Thought I would go with some more modern cars and see what they come up with. Sorry, I'm walking around while I grab my piece of paper here. So just to give you perspective, a Porsche GT3 RS with a 500 horsepower engine has a horsepower per standard ton of 317 horsepower per standard ton versus this, which is 495. And then I thought, let's go crazy. Let's look at the Dodge Demon 170 and calculate its horsepower per ton. As you might imagine, that car is super heavy, weighs 4,280 pounds. has 1,025 horsepower on race gas. So that is a monster. And when I ran the calculation, that horsepower per ton for the Dodge Demon 170, again, standard ton, not metric, 478.97. So this car has a slightly higher power to weight ratio per ton than a Dodge Demon 170, which is kind of crazy. Now, that's all well and good, looks good on paper, it's fun bragging rights, it's all that great stuff. But the elephant in the room is that this car has 0 traction control, 0 stability control. It has no power steering, no anti-lock brakes. So the odds of me getting the power down like somebody might be able to do in a 170, especially with those drag slicks on it, is about 0%. I'm not going to be able to do what a Demon 170 can do, simply because I don't have the driver aids and I don't have the special drag setup, and I'm smarter than your average Demon driver. I shouldn't say that. I'm just kidding. The reality is, I simply want to live long enough to see my grandkids, so I'm not going to do anything stupid in this car. If I attempted to put all that weight down, most likely I would find myself launching into the front lobby of your local business at the intersection. So I'm just simply not going to go too crazy on it, but it gives you an idea of how crazy this setup is with the Godzilla. It's just kind of stupid. But I kind of like it. Stupid is fun. And like I said, lots of bragging rights on the power. It looks great. They did a fantastic job on the engine install. So happy all around. But I thought you'd want to, know a little bit more about it and just understand what we got here, which is a nuclear power plant strapped to the weight of a Miata, basically. All right, guys, that's it. Quick video. Talk to you next time.